How you going, guys? And in this video, let's talk about two seemingly different characters, but they both came to the same conclusion, which really hit home for me. I first heard this from Ramana Maharshi and then later Blaise Pascal. And what this is about is intelligence, what true intelligence really means. The thing about me is, and why this hit really hard is, I'm an introvert. Grew up an introvert, still am an introvert. But the problem with being an introvert is, quite naturally, you go inwards a lot. You think and overthink, and that can ruin your life. Social interactions, your happiness, too much intellectualizing and conceptualizing. Very good for practical problems in the world. We need to think and analyze problems in the world. But for inner happiness, it will destroy you. It destroyed me. It wasn't until I started living from the heart, living from intuition, living from a deeper form of intelligence, that changed my life. And that's what these two great people I'm going to talk about were pointing to. First of all, let's start with Ramana Maharshi. I was exposed to him first, particularly in my early days on my spiritual path. He has a book called Talks with Ramana Maharshi. It's in 3 volumes. And in volume 2, Talk 355 is the one I'm going to start with, and then bring in Blaise Pascal a bit later. Talk 355. Let's just read it and then have a discussion. You'll see it there. The questioner asks Ramana Maharshi, does not education make a sage more useful to a world than illiteracy? Maharshi replied, even a learned man must bow before the illiterate sage. Illiteracy is ignorance. Education is learned ignorance. Both of them are ignorant of their true aim. Whereas a sage is not ignorant because there is no aim for him. This really hit home once I understood what this was pointing to. There are some enlightened beings that are very simple-minded. They have realized God within the heart. They have realized the true source of happiness, but they don't know much intellectually, what we would class as intelligence. They're in a state of ignorance. Ignorance about things that ultimately don't matter. Ultimately. There's so much knowledge about this world. Practical knowledge for practical solutions, but ultimately, what are we here for? What are we doing with all this knowledge? What are we striving for? Inner peace and happiness. The sage has realized the true source of happiness within, even though they're not very intelligent by worldly standards. That's why Ramana Maharshi was saying, the sage is ignorant. What about the wise person, the intellectual, that we put so much value in? He called that learned ignorance. And that is why there's so many intellectual people that are miserable. Because they don't have true wisdom. They have wisdom of the world, but they don't have wisdom of the heart. And I remember in my younger days, in my early 20s, many regular subscribers would know my story. Grew up a Christian, didn't resonate with me, could not believe in all this God stuff. I thought it was nonsense, to be honest. Went into atheism. Thought, look, atheism is the way. What God? What proof? Also got into a lot of conspiracy theories about life. Now, I just want to remind any atheists watching, I'm not equating atheism with conspiracy theories. All I'm saying is I discarded religion, got very intellectual, which was quite natural being an introvert and all. Thought I knew a lot about life. Thought I figured it out, and would look at people with their little simple lives, with their simple happiness, and thinking, these people are so ignorant. Only if they thought a bit more about life, they'd realize what they're doing is, ignorance is bliss. Simple-minded, simple lives, particularly these godly people. I thought, oh, God bless them. God bless them in quotes, a God I didn't believe in. Yeah, their little simple life with their simple beliefs, I guess it makes them happy, but it's a shame they're in ignorance. See, I had all this pride, arrogance, ego, thinking I figured out life, which is quite common in your 20s, isn't it, as a young man? But I wasn't happy. I was learning about, I was learning about socializing. I was terrible at socializing. How can I think and overthink my way to be very sociable? Learned about investing. Learned about how to build a better looking body. I was very skinny. Intellectualizing life, practical solutions to practical problems, but I was still miserable. I was learning ignorance. Ignorance about, yes, it's good to know about this world, of course, practical solutions to practical problems, but I didn't feel complete. Intellectualizing everything. I was single at the time, trying to go on dates, thinking to myself, I'm going to say this. If they say that, I'm going to say this. Had a predetermined plan before the interaction happened. What did that lead to? Awkwardness, nervous energy, thinking, overthinking. It makes the interaction weird. When you go in with a predetermined plan, it messes everything up. You get in your own way. And what I'm saying is, this is what Ramana Maharshi was pointing to. There is no aim for the sage. The sage has realized what is truly valuable in life, union with God. And union with God can't come through thinking. Now, Advaita Vedanta, which I talk about on this channel so much, is the path of knowledge. That's why I was drawn to it initially. We need concepts to navigate reality, but in Advaita Vedanta, you're given a bunch of concepts, enlightening concepts, to remove ignorant concepts. But then those enlightening concepts need to be put into practice. That's why they give you spiritual practice. And what does that do? Develop true wisdom. God can't be found through thinking and intellectualizing. God is found in the heart. And that's true wisdom. That's true knowledge. That's the whole purpose of this life. And once you find God here, your life is going to change. That's what did it for me. I'm an introvert, will always be an introvert, but I am so much more peaceful, happy, confident, calm, have a sense of humor. And why is that? Because yes, I still intellectualize life, but now I have heart, wisdom of the heart, wisdom of God in the heart. And that just balances out life so perfectly. Going around this reality, spreading love, kindness, compassion, spreading that feeling that can't be put into words. We all know the feeling of love, but when we put it into words, it never captures the feeling, does it? So when you just give off that vibe of love, patience, understanding, compassion, no matter what anyone believes, I've noticed this. If you're very patient, kind, loving, non-reactive to atheists, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, doesn't matter what anyone believes. When you give off that vibe, when people can feel it, when people can see it in your eyes, that you're just open, loving, calm, who cares what anyone believes? What ultimately matters to us? What is more primitive to us? What we think or what we feel? What we feel. Another thing you come to realize is all your logic comes from emotion. What we feel determines what we value, which determines how we think. And just a quick example, I could give many examples of this. How come when we're a young man or woman, there's a certain type of partner we logically want? When our hormones are raging when we're young. This is a particular criticism of women that men give. Oh, when a woman's young, she wants a bad boy, she wants this type of man. Yes, because her hormones and ways of thinking are a certain way. So she logically goes after a certain type of man. As a woman ages, and also a man, we logically pick a different type of partner because our hormones have changed, we've had some life experience, we have realized what's truly valuable in life, so we logically pick a different type of partner. Our feelings are our tectonic plates of our experience. When they adjust and shift, our logic shifts. That was a big realization for me. Being introverted and intellectual, I was learning ignorance, as Ramana Maharshi was saying. And this is where I want to bring in now Blaise Pascal. He talked about 3 types of intelligence. There's the intelligence of the average person who can be very successful in the world, has the intelligence of practical problems to practical solutions. That's one type of intelligence. And that type of person can be very successful in the world, like I said. The second type of person has the intelligence we think of when we think of an intelligent person. Very intelligent in mathematics, science. Whether they're rich or not through their intelligence, it doesn't even matter. Many intellectual people aren't rich. They're just devoted to mathematics, science. Doesn't mean they're rich. Doesn't mean they're good at solving the practical problems of life. Their head is all into their knowledge. The third type of person, and the rarest, are those with the intelligence of the heart. What I was talking about with Ramana Maharshi, which is they know how to live from the heart. They know how to live from that deep intuition. They know what life's about. They might not be very good at practical problems. They might not be very intellectual in math and science, but they know how to live. They have solved the problem of their suffering. That type of intelligence comes from the heart. All this other knowledge is learned ignorance, as Ramana Maharshi says, but this type of person knows how to live. See, a philosopher knows how to intellectualize life, what life's about, the correct way to live intellectually. They can tell you. But this third type of person takes those teachings and lives them. See, you can learn how to drive. You can sit in a room and learn how to drive. But who cares until you actually get in the car and actually drive? There's a difference between learning intellectually how to drive and the experience of driving. In a similar way, it's so easy to intellectualize life, study religion, study philosophy, the optimal way to live. The intellect picks up ideas very quick. But ultimately, these ideas need to filter down into our lived experience. And that's why the third type of person, the sage, the enlightened person, whatever you want to call it, what Ramana Maharshi was pointing to and what Blaise Pascal was pointing to, they live from the heart. Intuition. It's prior to intellectual knowledge. And that was a big wake-up call for me. And to live a balanced, healthy life, obviously you need all three. Everyone's got different proportions, but the most essential is the last one. We need practical solutions to practical problems. Everyone needs that. It's also good to develop the intellect, learn mathematics, science, higher truths. That's really good to know too. But ultimately, this all comes down to heart. Operating from the root of love. That's what all the traditions and that's what all the spiritual traditions and religious traditions are ultimately saying at their core. Be a loving, kind, patient person. Love is the language of all. When I interact with anyone, whatever they believe doesn't bother me. All I care about, are you a loving, patient, non-reactive person? Oh, cool, you believe this, you believe that. That's interesting to know. But at the end of the day, we're feeling-based creatures. If you give off the vibe of love, patience, non-reactivity, people are drawn to you and you're drawn to them. If you give off the vibe of anger, hate, judgment, people want to stay away from you. That's one big key again I failed to realize. I was intellectualizing life, thinking what's the optimal way to speak to someone? What's the optimal thing to say? All this intellectualizing turns people off. They can tell you're calculating, intellectualizing. You're just not in the moment. You're just not being a genuine person. You're trying to think your way to being a genuine person. It doesn't work that way. So these two great men really drove home the point for me and perhaps you, if you weren't familiar with this, which is all this knowledge we're learning of the world, it's good and all, but it's learned ignorance. And when we believe we are our thoughts, our ideas, when we put so much value in our intelligence, we can cut ourselves off from life and be miserable. I'll leave you with this other quote. I'm pretty sure it was from Advaita. He said, after enlightenment, act like a fool. What is that basically saying? What it's basically saying is, once you understand truth through the intellect, once you take your intellect to the brink, analyze, study life through the path of knowledge. He was an Advaita Vedanta, by the way. Once you take your mind to the limit through the path of knowledge, your only option at the end is to act like a fool. Act like the regular person. Act like a child. Why is that? Because when we're in this halfway stage of thinking, I figured out life, I know what it's about, and I'm very miserable because I figured it out and all, and others haven't, and I feel so bad for them. I know the truth, they don't, and I'm miserable because I know the truth. Once our mind gets past that point and is taken to the limit and realizes, hang on, I cannot know anything about this reality. Once the intellect reaches its limits and surrenders, you're going to be in the state of a child again. You've started off in the state of a child with a lot of mystery and wonder about life. Then you learn some concepts as you grew up. At a certain point, you take those concepts to be reality and then suffer as a result. Through the path of knowledge, at least, you take your intellect to the brink, and then the intellect eventually surrenders and thinks, wow, I cannot know anything. As a child, you don't know that you don't know anything. When you get a little bit older, you know that you don't know anything or much. From a teenager to the rest of many people's lives, they think they know about life. But what do the enlightened realize? They realize, I know that I do not know anything. What a mystery, miracle, and wonder reality is. And there's a conscious intelligence, without thinking, running through all of this reality. Look at this reality. Without thinking, all this is happening. All this is getting done in reality. What makes you think you're so different? Do you feel like you're an alien implanted here? You might think that, but that's just a concept. The very fabric of you and reality are one. The conscious intelligence running through this reality, without thinking, is running through you. All that's happened with us is we've overlaid conceptual thinking onto this experience, thinking we have ownership and control and we've figured life out. We have just figured out ignorance. Very practical ignorance for dealing with the world, but you need to operate from the heart. That's what I'm driving at. And it's not really me driving at it. These two wonderful, wise men are driving at that point. And so many other wise sages are driving at the point God is found through the heart. Keep intellectualizing, but understand the limitations of intellect and live through heart. God is prior to language. God is a felt experience. If you want to experience God, you can't think your way to God. I'll leave it at that. Take care.